Hello YouTube, and welcome to this part. So this is a reminder here just at the beginning that this is a part of these series of videos that aims basically to teach you how to start from zero on like how to tackle air conditioning. We're not here just talking about just knowing how to charge the air conditioning system, but how to diagnose the problems on it and how to identify how it works. So if you missed one of these previous videos, you can check. There is more explanations, and if you follow the parts step by step, there is more explanations on the channel. I will put them all in playlist. You'll find it on the main page, and that will explain step by step. So when you are starting and you're not familiar, let's say you're not familiar with a certain engine bay, let's start by telling you how to identify where the air conditioning components can be. So there are like three main points that you can start tracking the system. So if you are unfamiliar with things and you try to learn how to track any system, you need to identify a part or a component and follow the hoses that links that one to another, and then you'll be able to track some stuff without the necessity to go into deeper into diagrams. So diagrams can be a little bit expensive, that you have to go online and look for them and pay. There's on Mitchell.com. You can find all the wire diagrams and everything related. So this is a Toyota 4Runner. This is a Toyota Sequoia, and it has the 2UZ, a famous V8, the best engine ever. So how do we identify the air conditioning components? So there is step number one is you can start by at the front. So this is speaking of any vehicles. We'll take another example later. So starting at the front, look around the radiator. It's easy to distinguish which is which. So you always find the condenser just installed right by the radiator, and most cases you'll find a separate fan for it, and this case is here. So let's say I want to start by the condenser. I'll actually follow one of the lines that comes out of it, like that one there, the one below goes up there and come up through there and go through a switch. So we'll come back to it. Let's say I wanted to start it by the compressor. The compressor is usually one of these components that are belt driven. In this case, it's this one here. How do you identify that? Is usually it has a wiring connection for the clutch and two hoses. You'll also see the hoses for, in most cases, for the power steering. And how do you distinguish that? You'll find one wide like diameter hose and one smaller diameter hose, and you'll definitely, through the more experience you have, you'll realize you start seeing like Goodyear, and you start seeing like different kind of brands that repeats, and you'll see like these kind of lines, and you'll definitely tell, because those lines can never be lines for the anything else. So this is like where I'm focusing now. That's, to my opinion, this is part number 3 that you can start tracking your hoses from. Is look around the firewall and identify two lines, and usually they don't turn to a hose until really close to the compressor. You'll also find other hoses for the heating, like these two there, but you'll clearly tell the difference because the heating hoses will go straight to the engine. So I don't know where we have to start tracking, but the topic of this video is the component locations. But let's, for example, tackle this, and on the this sequoia, and then we'll tackle the same system on another car, maybe another 3 of them. And yeah, the point of doing this is getting like the proper training to acquire some knowledge on how to tell where the charging ports are, how to tell where the hoses goes. Very, very important for diagnostics, as every hose and line is very responsible for sealing the system, and later on when you have a leaking issue, you'll have to be able to tell where these hoses goes. Even behind the firewall, that's going to be a Morse cluster. So, but let's just stay on this side of the firewall now, and maybe later on we'll make something like that. So let us start by the compressor, as we did mention in part number 1. We started by the compressor. Let's just follow that up. Okay, so this hose, so that's our compressor in the system here, hooked up with the belt there. So there is that wire there, connection here. That's actually what controls the fan. Is what controls the clutch for the compressor. So you'll find 2 hoses, one that usually wider diameter and the other one is tighter. The other one is there. This one goes down that way. So the one that have the smaller diameter is always the high pressure, and the one that have the wider diameter is always the low pressure. So this is the return, this low, let's say the return, and this is like bringing the Freon back to the compressor. So the compressor is going to pump it through the low diameter. Let's follow that hose. That one there. So that one there, where's it going? It goes through here, through the front, comes out of here. Because obviously, as video number 1, we know after the compressor you're going to run through the condenser. So this kind of condenser is Toyota one. It's a little bit different. Usually you have this high pressure for Freon, take it through to cool it down, to go across them small tubes, cooling down. But here is a little bit confusing about this. Later on we'll take an easier part. The Freon comes out of this way and goes to the receiver dryer. So, and then the receiver dryer brings it back to cool down even more, because that go back. This is the same line. Same line goes back down there. It's inside, still cooling down. So the receiver dryer always have that dot that you could see through. You can see through for water, for impurities and everything. And also we go by the high pressure port. So the high pressure port is usually on the high pressure side. If you follow the compressor, you'll find it actually after the condenser, after it goes through the condenser. Can we put Freon through this? Yes, we can, but it's not recommended. It's always recommended through the low port, and we'll say that later, because why? We'll say that later. So after it goes back to condenser again, it comes out this way from the bottom, goes through the front clip, and then goes here. So you see like there is a wiring connection there. So what do you think is that? That's a high pressure switch. It has the role of cutting off the AC system. How does it cut it off? It cuts actually the compressor. When the pressure is building too high and too risky, the wiring goes to this circuit board, and then it connects. It gives the command to cut it off when the pressure is too high. So you can bypass that, but it's not recommended. So after that, that hose, excuse me, that's a line. Don't follow the top one. That's not it. That's the return. This is the return. We'll come back to it later. So that goes from the bottom. Sorry about the lighting. It's the same one, comes down the bottom one there. This is the bottom one coming from the bottom. Now, here in this example, here's why it's just the part of newer people that try to learn how to stuff. Sometimes they get confused, but for example, for this vehicle, we have a multi-evaporator system. So we don't have one evaporator. We have two. So one is going to be right behind the firewall and one for the back seaters, because it's a luxury sedan. Sometimes in some systems you find two, sometimes you find even three. So that's going to split. One of them is going to go down, you can see down there below the vehicle, to the second evaporator, and the main one is on front, goes right through the firewall. So what's inside there? There's expansion valve, and there's an evaporator to cool, and then the Freon will come back this way. Now, after coming from the evaporator, that's when it turns to low pressure, and that's where you find the charging port, the low pressure charging port. Man, this thing is tight. Always be. Yep, here we go. This is really good. I mean, it's clean, it's nice. We still have the O-ring. These have O-ring in case of these leaks. So always, so I'm not gonna jump pretty quick. You can tell that that comes out, but it meets with this. And there is another T here that's also the system in parallel that brings the other hose, comes down from the back of the vehicle, bringing the low pressure Freon from the secondary evaporator. So they both meet here and they go on this. Like we said, remember, anything with low pressure goes with a bigger diameter. It goes all the way back down to here. Same hose there. And it goes back to the compressor. So now, right on, we completed the cycle. I know we skipped the part that's behind the firewall. Unfortunately, we cannot see that, but the only way to understand how it all functions is if you check the video number 1, you will see the explanation. And it will kind of build up a sort of theoretical and imagination to just knowing what's going behind.